All right, today we are diving deep into a place where ancient myths and prehistoric reality just completely smash into each other. We're going to explore a legendary monster and a real-life giant that is, believe it or not, stranger than any fiction. Let's get into it. So let's start with a really big question, okay? This is kind of the whole point of our story today. What if the monsters that haunted our ancestors' nightmares weren't just made up? What if they were actually distorted memories, these faint echoes of creatures that really walked the earth millions and millions of years before them? And that question leads us directly to our monster. I mean, can you imagine hearing stories like this passed down from your grandparents and their grandparents before them? It's absolute nightmare fuel. A monster lurking in the water, ready to devour anything. This is the legend of the Indus Worm. Okay, so let's get properly introduced to this thing. For centuries, people, travelers, historians, you name it, they all describe this terrifying creature that was said to haunt the Indus Worm Valley. And what's wild is how specific the details are. This wasn't just some cold snake. The stories consistently talk about a huge, worm-like body, two big tusk-like teeth, a dark, even hairy hide, and a super aggressive personality. This thing was a predator, plain and simple. So, you have to ask, right? Is this just a bogeyman? You know, a story you tell kids to keep them away from the river's edge? Or could these very specific details actually be clues? Clues pointing towards something real that our distant ancestors might have literally dug up from the ground. Okay, so hit pause on the world of myth for a second. We're going to travel way, way back, deep into Earth's prehistoric past. We are leaving legend behind and stepping into the world of paleontology to meet a creature that is, honestly, even more unbelievable than some mythical worm. Everybody, meet Arthropleura. Now, this was not a myth. This was a real animal. It was a giant, armored, kind of millipede-like creature that thrived in these lush, swampy forests way back in the Carboniferous period. And when I say giant, I mean truly mind-bogglingly giant. So how giant are we talking? Well, from fossil trackways and body parts we found, we think it could get up to 2.5 meters long. That's about 8 feet. Just let that sink in. An invertebrate, a bug that was longer than most people are tall. Okay, maybe school bus is a bit of an exaggeration, but you see how people can get carried away. The point is, at over 8 feet long, this was the largest known land invertebrate of all time. It was an absolute behemoth. And this is where it all comes together. This is where our two stories, the myth and the reality, just crash right into each other. So, what happens when you take the description of a legendary monster and put it right next to the fossil of a real prehistoric giant? Well, the results are pretty amazing. I mean, this is where the light bulb really goes on. Just look at the parallels. The legend talks about a huge, worm-like creature near water. Arthropleura was a giant, segmented creature that lived in swampy forests. The legend says it had 2 big teeth. Arthropleura had these massive, powerful mandibles. That dark hide could easily be someone's interpretation of a dark, fossilized exoskeleton. The similarities are they're uncanny. Now you're probably thinking, hold on, there's a huge problem here. And you're right, it's the time gap. Arthropleura died out almost 300 million years before anyone wrote down the first stories of the Indus Worm. So obviously, no human ever saw a living one. The theory isn't that people saw it, it's that ancient people found its fossils. Imagine digging in a riverbed and pulling out this giant, armored, segmented thing. You'd have no idea what it was, but you would for sure tell stories about it. So how strong is this theory really? It's a fantastic story, but we've got to be good scientists here and look at it with a critical eye. So let's weigh the evidence for and against this really cool idea. Okay, so in the for column, the physical similarities are just undeniable. And we know for a fact other myths, like the Cyclops, were probably inspired by people finding elephant skulls. So it's plausible. But then you have the against column, and there are some big hurdles. The biggest? We've never actually found any Arthropleura fossils in the Indus Valley. And that detail about hair? That's a real stretch when you're talking about a fossilized exoskeleton. So, this is where the theory stays in this fascinating zone of speculation, not quite proven fact. So, whether the Indus worm was literally arthropod or not, what does all this mean? What does this connection tell us? Well, it speaks to something much deeper about how we as humans make sense of our world. and how the ancient past can cast these huge, colossal shadows all the way into our present. You know, the big takeaway here is just incredible when you think about it. It suggests that our whole human culture, our myths, our legends, might have its own kind of fossil record. Our stories could be preserving these faint, garbled echoes of a world that existed hundreds of millions of years ago, a world of real giants that our ancestors could only explain by calling them monsters. And that's the thought I want to leave you with. If the legend of some terrifying riverworm could actually be the distant memory of a giant prehistoric millipede, what about all the other myths? What about dragons or the kraken? How many other monsters from our collective imagination are out there just waiting for the right fossil to be discovered, finally connecting our stories to an even stranger reality? Like and subscribe to learn more about mysteries of the past. Share now.